Brachos Daf discusses the halacha in a number of cases where you have flour or bread products that are made into various forms that are not the standard bread form. The Gemara discusses if you have flour mixed into another recipe where it is the minority, is it a mizonos or a different bracha? The Gemara discusses the correct bracha on rice or millet and other non-main grains. The Gemara talks about mizonos which is cooked, bread which is cooked, a type of mizonos which is a cooked thing like a porridge which is a mizonos dish. The Gemara talks about the bracha achrona on rice. What should that bracha be after we finish discussing the bracha rishona? The Gemara talks about if you're cooking bread, what is the minimum size that it maintains the bracha of hamotzi even though it's being cooked. Then the Gemara will discuss various different types of breads and a number of interesting recipes and what their various halacha is as far as challah. The Gemara begins by quoting two joint statements of Rav and Shmuel, which are seemingly redundant. Statement number one, anything which is made out of the 5 grains is a bar minim mizonos. The 5 grains are wheat, barley, oats, rye, and spelt. Second statement, anything which has any of the 5 grains in it is mizonos. The Gemara says it's redundant. The Gemara says, well, if I only told you something made out of the 5 grains, you would not know that something that has 5 grains in it is also mizonos. Now, why can you just say anything that has the 5 grains in it is mizonos? So would have said that, then you would think, well, anything that has the 5 grains in it is mizonos. What about something that's made completely out of grain? That could be mizonos even if it's not 5 grains, even if it's other grains, such as what the Gemara calls orez and dochen, which Tosfos translates as rice and millet. So the Gemara says, by saying that something which is made out of the 5 grains is mizonos, Rav and Shmuel are telling me that things that are made out of orez and dochen are not mizonos. They are a different bracha. Now the Gemara challenges this. The Gemara says, is that true? Things that are made out of rice and millet are not mizonos, but we have a brisa. The brisa says the following thing. Bread made out of rice and millet is the same halacha as a porridge, a floury kind of porridge that's made out of real mizonos, and you have a bracha. Seemingly, the implication is that the bracha is, the beginning is bar minim mizonos, and at the end it's al mechia. The first bracha is mizonos, and the after bracha is al mechia. So that seems to imply that rice and millet also get a first bracha of mizonos and an after bracha of al mechia. So Gemara says no. The brisa, when it says that rice and millet bread is similar to cooked porridge made out of regular flour, it's similar in the fact that it gets a bracha in the beginning and a bracha at the end, but it's not the same bracha. Rice and millet get a different bracha. Their bracha is shahakal in the beginning and bar nefashos at the end. The Gemara now brings another challenge to the idea that the bracha on rice is not mizonos. The Gemara says we have a brisa that lists maisa kedera. It lists porridges where the implication is that the bracha is mizonos, and on the list you have rice. Also on the list you have grits made out of wheat grain that's split into halves or thirds or fourths or fifths, but you got rice right there on the list, so that clearly implies that the bracha on rice is mizonos. Someone says you're right. Is a machlokes tanaim? This is like the one who holds that it's mizonos. It's Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri who says it's mizonos. We see it clearly. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says that you could make matzah out of rice, and you could it's chametz if it's not made like matzah, it's chametz, and you chayiv kares for it if you eat it on Pesach. The Gemara says, but the Rabbanan disagree, and we're going to hold like the Rabbanan that it's not a mizonos. The Gemara now says, okay, you're trying to hide behind the sheet of the Rabbanan and say that the Rabbanan, the ones who hold that rice is not a mizonos. And it's Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri who holds that rice is the same as regular grain. The Gemara says, I'll prove to you that that's not true. I'll show you a brisa where the Rabbanan, it's got to be the Rabbanan, and they clearly hold that rice is a mizonos. What does the brisa say? The brisa says the following thing. If you eat raw grains, the brisa says the bracha is always hadam. It doesn't matter what the grain is. If you eat bread cooked and fully dissolved, the bracha is always mizonos and al mechia. Doesn't matter what the grain is. And here's the key point though. If you eat cooked bread where the pieces are still whole, then it depends what the bread is made out of. If the bread is made out of regular grains, it's hamotzi and it's Brachos Hamazon, but if it's rice bread, then it's mazonos and el mechia. Now this can't be Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri because he holds there is no difference between rice and grain, and the brachos would have to be the same. It has to be the Rabbanan, and it clearly says that rice is a mazonos. The Gemara concludes, you're correct. There is no shita that agrees with Rav and Shmuel. Everybody holds that rice is a mazonos, and Rav and Shmuel's opinion is rejected. The Gemara now proceeds to analyze this brisa a little bit more in depth. The Gemara says, you said in this brisa that somebody who eats raw wheat kernels says a bracha hadama. We learned somewhere else that he says a bracha bari minei zrayim. Gemara says, no, that's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Rabbi Yehuda has this bracha bari minei zrayim, or bari minei dushayim. He holds that each type of thing that grows gets its own specific bracha. We don't hold that way. We say hadama on the different types of things that grow, whether it's grassy or it's vegetables. We don't hold that way. The Gemara now analyzes the next halacha, which we saw in the brisa, which is that if you have rice bread that is cooked and is completely ground up, dissolved, the bracha achrona is ala michya. So the Gemara says it's not true. The bracha achrona on rice is burn of hashos. That's a brisa. So the Gemara says you have a contradiction between brisas as to whether the bracha achrona on rice is ala michya or burn of hashos. The Gemara says it's not a kasha. Rav Shesha says so machokes Rav Gamliel and the Rabbanon. Rav Gamliel says that it's ala michya, and the Rabbanon say that it is burn of hashos. Now the Gemara quotes this brisa, and the whole final halacha will be this machokes. And the brisa discusses the bracha achrona on 3 levels of foods. The highest level of food is bread made out of the 5 grains. That both the Rabbanan and Rav Gamliel agree. You have to say Brachos Hamazon on. The next level is either the Shivas Haminim, the 7 special fruits that Eretz Yisrael is benched with, or the 5 grains, 2 of which are in the Shivas Haminim. There's a machlokes. Rav Gamliel says you have to say Brachos Hamazon on it, and the Rabbanan say you have to say Al Mechi on it, and that's if those 5 grains are not bread. Again, it's the 7 special fruits or the 5 grains which are not in the bread state. Now the last halacha is something which is not from the 7 special fruits, nor is it one of the special grains. A good example of that is rice, and that is our machlokes. Rav Gamliel says it's an al mechia, and the Rabbanan say it's burn of hashos. So the Gemara says, therefore you see this machlokes, and now you don't have a problem. Our brisa that we quoted that says that the after bracha on rice is al mechia is Rav Gamliel. The Gemara says not so fast. Can't be. The brisa which you just quoted made it clear that any of the 5 grains or any of the 7 fruits which are not made into bread, according to Rav Gamliel, gets a bracha achrona of Brachos Hamazon. So then our brisa couldn't be Rav Gamliel because our brisa said that if you have a cooked bread, regular bread, then its after bracha is ala michya, and that certainly qualifies, according to Rav Gamliel, for the 7 grains or the 7 fruits of the 5 grains, and it should be Brachos Hamazon. So our brisa cannot be Rav Gamliel. So we're back to our kasha. How could it say that the after bracha on rice is al mechia when the Rabbanan say that it's burn of hashos? The Gemara says you're right. We'll have to change the text of the brisa to read that you do not say al mechia after rice. The Gemara now refers back to the ruling we had at the beginning of the daf by Rav and Shmuel that anything that has from the 5 grains in it is automatically going to be a bar minim mezainis. The Gemara quotes Rava. Rava had a halacha, and then he changed the halacha because of this ruling of Rav and Shmuel. Rava's original halacha was concerning porridge. He said that it depends what the recipe is. If it is the ones that are made in the villages, has a lot of flour, the brachos mazonos. The ones that are made in the cities, that has more other ingredients, not so much flour, so they're the brachos shehakol. Then Rava changed and he said no. Even if it does not have a majority of flour, it still is a mazonos, because Rav and Shmuel's halacha that flour from the 5 grains is never a non-ikr just because it's a minority. The Gemara returns to the halacha of a dish that contains cooked bread in it, and Rav Yosef says if it has pieces in it, so it depends what the size of the pieces are. If they are concise or larger, then the entire dish is a hamaitzi, and you need to say Brachos Hamazon. If the pieces are smaller than a concise, then it's bar minim mezainis and it's al michya. What's the source for this? Because we find by karbanis, there was karbanis that were made of pieces of bread that were broken up, and it was cooked, and they had to be the size of a kizayis, according to one shita, and the bracha was hamaitzi. So the Gemara asks, what about according to the other shita? What about according to Tana Debei, Rabbi Shmuel, that the bread was broken back down to flour? So you want to say that, according to him, you don't have to say hamaitzi, but that's not true. We have a brisa that says, if you took from a bunch of karbanos, a bunch of little pieces of this bread from all over, and you put them together, and it was the size of a kizayis that was collected, it has a halach of chametz, and it's kares if you eat it, and if it's masa, you could use it for Pesach. So you see clearly it has the full halach of bread, even though it was cooked in pieces smaller than a kizayis. Says, no, that's talking about something else. That's talking about where you collected all the pieces and then you made it into a dough again and you baked it again. So it's a new thing. That's why it has a new halacha. It's restored to the halacha of bread, even though it was cooked before, in smaller pieces than a kizayis. The Gemara says, hold on a second. That can't be the case. If it's talking about that, then the rest of the brisa doesn't make sense. What does it say in the rest of the brisa? It says, if you ate them in a too long period of time, you don't have to say the bracha acharina. Why does it say if you ate them? If we're talking about where you made all the pieces into one new bread, it should say if you made it. That must not be the case. You must have got the case wrong. The case must be where the pieces were separate, and you still see it as a halach of bread, even though we're cooked pieces less than a kizayis. So you must be wrong. It should be hamaitzi, even if the pieces that were cooked were less than a kizayis size. The Gemara admits the point. The Gemara says there's a new halacha here. We'll tell there's a new halacha. There's a new reason why these pieces are going to be hamaitzi. If the case is where the pieces come from a large bread and the rest of the bread still exists in one piece, it was pieces broken off. In a case like that, it'll be hamaitzi even if the pieces that were cooked were smaller than a kizayis. The Gemara concludes that the halacha is that pieces that were cooked, even if they are smaller than a kazayis, are still hamaitzi, as long as it still maintains the appearance of bread. It still has tzuras hapas. The Gemara now refers to a few different recipes and discusses whether they count as bread or not. The halachic issue that the Gemara is referring to is whether you have to take challah from it. Challah you have to take from bread. So first the Gemara talks about taroknin. The Gemara says taroknin is where you make a little bit of a hollow in the floor of the oven, you fill it up with water and flour, you mix it together already in the hot oven. That, the Gemara says, is not chayav in challah, but the Gemara says that Teresa, the Gemara says, is also not chayav in challah. What is Teresa? The Gemara gives three explanations of what Teresa might be. Number one is that it's like a pancake where you made a batter that was loose and you put it on a hot surface, so it kind of sizzled or fried. The next the Gemara says is an Indian bread, which is where you're roasting bread on a spit while constantly basting it with eggs and oil. And the third one is bread which is made for kutach. Now kutach is a recipe that contained yogurt kind of thing, like sour milk, with a lot of salt and breadcrumbs. So it was crumbed up, the bread. So if the bread was crumbed up, it's not made to be whole, it's made to be crumbs. And the Gemara even says so, that bread which is made for kutach is not chayav in challah. The Gemara says, what do you mean? I saw halacha somewhere else where it is chayav in challah. The Gemara says that's a different kind of thing. That's talking about where it looks like a bread which is not meant to be made for kutach. A bread which is meant to be made for kutach is not made with any kind of shape, because you're going to end up crumbing it up anyway. But if it's made in a nice loaf, so then it is chayav in challah. Rashi points out that bread which is made for a kutach is generally baked in the sun. It's not baked in an oven.